Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Brandenburg and these are my partners Kelly Caldwell and Jackson Carey. Our topic for this presentation was aging in different countries, and we specifically wanted to look at two different countries outside of the US. We chose to look at the aging process in Japan and Germany, and we wanted to compare and contrast some of the factors that are at play and the overall results between these two countries as well. A quick outline before we jump into the data here. Right off the bat, let's go ahead and get it out of the way. There is a significant difference in the aging process between Western and Eastern cultures, at least according to all of the research that we reviewed. However, it is important to note that despite the fact that we know that there are differences, no one researcher or no one study could really provide a comprehensive list of where all the differences lie or which differences were most influential to the aging process. So what we'll be doing in this presentation here today is presenting some of the information that we found and then using some of the research that we found to make some educated guesses and inferences as to which factors are most influential to the aging process. But nothing here is necessarily conclusive. It's not letting me switch slides. So Japan is placed about third on the world rankings for highest life expectancies, with the average life expectancy for males being 81.9 years and females being about 87.9 years. Very, very long life expectancy in Japan. They're only topped by Hong Kong and Macau, and the differences in lifespan are generally only by a few months to a few weeks on average. They do have an aging population, which means that there is a growing number of older adults in Japan's population. We can see that illustrated by this graph here. This tan line that we see is the percentage of population that's over 65 years old, and they actually project into the future up to about 2050, and we can see this kind of big spike that happened and is expected to continue rising in the future. That's worth noting because as Japan's population grows older on average, this will be placing a strain on their national healthcare systems as well as their elder care services in future. They do have a moderate prevalence of dementia. Their dementia rates are higher than Germany's, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it is possible that this is due to that overrepresentation of older adults in their population. Because they have such a disproportionately high number of older adults, it could just be that the data is skewed because dementia tends to affect older adults more. They have about 4.4 million victims of dementia as of this year, or about 3% of their population. Moving on to Germany. Germany is 31st in the world in terms of highest life expectancy, with the average life expectancy for male being about 80 years, 79.9 years, and females being 84.4 years. So a lot noticeably lower than Japan and about 30 steps down the ladder. They do have a large population of older adults, but it is smaller proportionately than Japan's is, with about, I want to say the number was about 27%, 55 and up, but we'll verify that and put it in the notes before we present. And they do have a lower prevalence of dementia than Japan, but again, we have to consider the fact that Japan has such a disproportionately large older adult population. They have about 1.6 million victims of dementia, or about 1.9% of their population. Just to put these numbers in perspective, let's look at the US statistics. So the average lifespan in the US is 73.3 years for males and 79.3 years for females. It's about a 10-year difference between the US and Japan, and about a 6-year difference between the US and Germany. Some estimates actually say that 1 in 10 Americans, up to 1 in 10 Americans, have dementia. That's 10% of our population, 7% more than Japan, and like 9.1% more than Germany's. Or 8.1% more than Germany. 6.7 million adults in the US have been diagnosed with dementia. So some big differences between those two countries and ours. Looking at customs, so cultural differences in lifestyle and cultural traditions may influence lifespan. And a study conducted in 2021 concluded that there is moderate evidence suggesting that the three of the 6 dimensions of culture influence life expectancy, with these influences being individualism, long-term orientation or mindset, and indulgence. So some Japanese customs. Japan is a highly collectivistic culture, meaning that they find their identity in the group rather than the person. They have strong traditions of filial devotion, meaning that children honor their parents, honor their grandparents and ancestors a lot more than in other cultures. This is actually a picture of the Kero no Hi festival, which is a festival that is specifically for celebrating the lives of older adults in Japan. There are close family ties with older adults living near children. This is actually a photo, that's me in this picture here. And I was working with a senior care home or senior care community really in Japan for people who were displaced by the 2011 Fukushima tsunami and nuclear disaster. And in this household, there were 4 generations living under the same roof. And that was nothing really crazy to them. That was kind of a normal way of life. And there is an expectation for children to take care of their parents, their grandparents, their elders as they age. There's not as many nursing homes or assisted living facilities there. Meanwhile, in Germany, they are an individualistic culture. There's a big emphasis on independence and self-identity and separation from the group. There's less of an emphasis on elder care, less of an emphasis on kind of honoring the elders. Not to say that they disrespect older adults, but they don't exactly have festivals for old people like they do in Japan. Older adults typically live alone. They typically have their own homes, their own property. There's a lot less kind of passing down of property in the family lines. And there aren't really any expectations for family care the same way that there would be in Japan. Children are not really expected to take on the burden of taking care of their parents as they age. And there is a desire in the older adults, conversely, to age independently. Older adults, in some surveys, have reported that they don't want to live, don't want to be reliant on another person. So some food for thought, a study conducted by Rohr, Renninghaus, and Riedel Heller in 2020. This occurred during the COVID lockdown, and they wanted to see how the lockdown was affecting the well-being of older adults in Germany. They had about 1,000 participants over 65 years old. They used a self-reported well-being index, and they measured kind of on the scale of loneliness, depression, and anxiety, and they found that older adults in the pandemic during lockdown didn't really feel that much differently than they did before the lockdown. Only about 13% of older adults in Germany reported feeling any kind of loneliness in the months of the pandemic. So I use this as an example to kind of back up the fact that older adults kind of want to be left alone in Germany because I don't know about you guys, but I felt pretty lonely during the pandemic, and if only 13% of that population felt any kind of loneliness, it shows that they weren't really upset about being alone or not seeing their family every day. So to look at some lifestyle and infrastructure, we're going to be looking at factors such as diet, exercise, and even mindset or outlook, combined with infrastructure such as like healthcare and elder care support systems. UAB Medical School says that a healthy lifestyle will positively contribute to quality of life with effects on lifespan as well. So to look at the German lifestyle, there is a well-established social safety net. There is a retirement system in place and something kind of similar to Social Security in Germany. Early retirement is very common. Their average retirement age is 64 years old as compared to the US being like 67, 68. But that age is kind of creeping up due to economic kind of viability as things become more expensive. People can't retire as early as they used to. They do have high quality healthcare. Their healthcare is not as high quality as Japan's might be, but it is still high quality, and there are government support systems in place for people who can't afford private healthcare as well. Their diet is less healthy than Japan's might be. It's tasty, but it's full of carbs, full of trans fats, LDLs, cholesterol, everything like that. And, it's the birthplace of beer, so they have a high amount of alcohol consumption and a lot of tobacco consumption as well. There's a lot of smokers in Germany, especially among the older population. Meanwhile, the Japanese lifestyle is quite different. They have a strong tradition of lifelong employment. People do retire in Japan, but it's certainly not uncommon to work until the day you can't. Not really the day you die, but the day you can't, which is pretty old for some of those folks. They tend to have more active lifestyles in the older populations, both physically and mentally. They don't have a whole lot of automobile, or they don't rely as much on automobiles as we do in like the US. So there's a lot more walking to train stations, a lot of cycling, a lot more physical activity. There are government support systems and programs in place specifically to prevent isolation of older adults. This is actually a photo of me working at I was kind of serving food at the senior center. They were doing an event as kind of a cultural exchange where we provided kind of a real American Thanksgiving, and then we got to meet a lot of the older people there. These are a lot of kids in the photo, but it was like 70% older adults there. They do have high quality preventative medicine as well, some of the highest quality in the world by some accounts. And they have a generally healthy diet with a lower amount of fat, a lower amount of, or not as much carbs, and a lot more vitamins and minerals. And some food for thought on that note, when we're looking at Japanese differences, there was a study conducted in 2023 of over 70,000 older adults in Japan looking for correlation between age-related cognitive decline and living alone. There was a 10-item dementia checklist as well as the WHO Wellbeing Index. They did find a significant difference between the adults that live alone versus the adults that had easy access to community support. It seems that older adults who live alone have much steeper cognitive decline and a reduction in overall well-being when compared to adults that have access to community support or family outreach. Some final conclusions to tie it all together. Japan's population seems to age more successfully than Germany's. The biggest differences there are between the culture styles, so collectivistic and individualistic styles, and kind of the changes that precipitate from those, as well as family support and diet overall. And a lot of the research had provided support for active lifestyles, so physically active and mentally active lifestyles, and just avoiding isolation overall when it comes to positive impact on lifespan. Here are our references. That puts us at about 11 minutes, but I stuttered a whole lot. I did this without a script, so I was just kind of freestyling. I'm sure that if we, as a group, practice a little more just before tomorrow, it should be well under 10 minutes. I did this once without recording, and it was about like 9 minutes, but I left out some details. And then with all of my stuttering and stuff, in this one we added some time. So I think we're pretty good at about 10 minutes. We can always kind of skip past some of the fluff details if we need to as well. All right, that's it.